Okay, welcome. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here for today's Lunch and Learn. My name is Lauren Williams. I'm Adult and Community Services Manager for the Columbia Public Library. Today's Lunch and Learn, we're going to be hearing from presiding Boone County Commissioner Kip Kendrick. And today's Lunch and Learn is co-hosted by the library and the League of Women Voters of Columbia, Boone County. And we have people attending both in the room here at the Friends Room and also on Zoom. So a couple of housekeeping items. If you are on Zoom and want to ask a question, we ask that you use the chat feature to ask those questions. And there is a drop-down menu where you can say you want to share that chat with everyone. Please select that so others can see what questions have been asked. We appreciate that. And then we're also going to be saving questions for the end of Kip's presentation. And for those of you in the room, for accessibility reasons and so that people on Zoom can hear what's being asked, I'll walk around with a microphone if you raise your hand and have a question, and we will use that microphone. We're also recording today's presentation, so it will be available the next day or two on both the League's YouTube channel and the library's YouTube channel for future viewing. And now I'd like to welcome Barbara Hoppy of the League of Women Voters of Columbia, Boone County to say a few words and introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Lauren Williams and the Columbia Public Library for co-sponsoring our Lunch and Learn program. We're just pleased to have Kip Kendrick, presiding commissioner, Boone County Commissioner, here today to give us an update on the Boone County planning process. And I wanted to just say a few words about Kip. He was elected in November 2022 and started January of 2023 as presiding Boone County Commissioner. And before that, was our state representative for many years and many other things. Also has an undergrad degree from Columbia College. My husband remembers me from back then, and a graduate degree from MU. And he has an extensive bio on the commission website if you want to read more. But I wanted to say just a few words that when I first met Kip, it was before I ran for council, and Kip lived in the Stephen Benton neighborhood and was the president of the neighborhood association. Really very active, great ideas, just seemed like a very bright, energetic, caring young man then, and he's still a bright, caring, and still young man now. So I give you Kip Kendrick.
Yeah, that's right. Young and relative thing. Thank you. And thanks, Barbara. I'll never forget, it was shortly after your election. Ran into you at Earth Day downtown and got to congratulate you in person on your election to the city council. And thanks for your service, your long service on city council, and kind of where we are now in the master planning process. We'll talk about for sure. It involves extensive collaboration, cooperation with our municipal partners, with our sister political subdivisions across Boone County. Because while this is, the Boone County government, the Boone County master plan, we don't own this. This is our entire process. Every resident, everyone who lives here, but not only lives here, those individuals who commute in and work here have had a say in the process because they have an important voice in what the future of Boone County looks like as well. Hopefully we can get them moving here as well in the future. So happy to be here. Before I get started, I want to talk just a little bit, provide a few updates on kind of other county projects along the way. And some of them tie in well to the master planning process, and I'll get into PowerPoint, an in-depth PowerPoint that I'll kind of talk high level on and where we are currently with the master plan. Currently, there's a housing study that's being conducted as well. This is the first county-wide housing study. The city of Columbia was interested in renewing their housing study, and Boone County government and the community services department stepped in and said, hey, what about we look at this countywide? Because we know that this isn't just a city of Columbia issue, it's a countywide issue on housing and lack of affordable housing. And we need to be looking at this as a countywide, really it's a state nationwide issue. But what can we do as far as countywide, working with our municipal partners and working within our planning department to address the issues of affordable housing. So there's currently our consultant for that, David Boston. Dr. Boston is in town this week. We've been having community meetings around Columbia. We'll be in Hallsville tonight and Ashland tomorrow evening. There is a housing study survey that is online and available for, at our showmeboone.com website. That will be available through April 14th. We encourage all members of the public to participate in that in the housing study. And it dovetails well. There's a reason why we're overlapping our master planning process with the housing study, as we'll get to here pretty soon. They collide. There's a tremendous amount of overlap. ARPA round 2 decisions. So we have round 2 decisions for our remaining ARPA, roughly about 6.5 million remaining in ARPA funds. It'll be announced. Fingers crossed, we pretty much have the list finalized, but we're just running all of that through our external auditors, make sure that all of the projects are in compliance with the federal regulations as we see. We need those outside eyes on it. So we should be announcing those decisions, I suspect, within the next couple of weeks. Solar regulations. Last night we had a hearing in the commission chamber on as part of our planning and zoning meeting on solar adopting solar regulations in Boone County. It was a good discussion. These the solar regulations have been in the works for the last couple of years, and part of the reason why we're moving them forward now is a plan. Our plan is to adopt the regulations. We're going to make some tweaks to them based on public comment and feedback that we've received. I suspect that we're adopting those in late April, early May. And there is these are industrial solar regulations, so the larger industrial facilities. There is a planned development of a solar farm that is interested in seeing these regulations move forward. And the regulations strike a good balance between how do we make sure to allow for industrial solar while also maintaining integrity of our rural communities, as well as how do we make sure that we find that balance on land use and habitat. And so there are very detailed plans out there. I'm very cautiously optimistic that we're going to see the Boone Stevens project move forward. The landowners in that area are in agreement to see it move forward, and so that'll likely be a 580-acre solar farm, 65 megawatts, and so that'll be a very large development. So our plan is to move these regulations through so that they start moving through the planning process. And then about 8 months from now, we're going to likely go back and take a look at the solar regulations, kind of what has worked on the planning side, what do we need to tweak to make sure that that we have a good, solid regulation moving forward. It's in very good shape right now. It's really about 1.5 years in the process of developing, but we want to make sure that we can go back and look at a couple of aspects of it and see how it plays out. So senior property tax freeze also on the April 2nd ballot that was passed. I'm happy to talk more about that, but I want to let you know that we have scheduled public hearings for April 18th here in the commission chamber at 1:30 p.m. We will have on April 25th, we will have that's a Thursday, we will be in Hallsville City Hall for a public hearing at 1:30 p.m. May 9th, we will be May 2nd, Thursday, May 2nd, 1:30 p.m. We will be in Centralia City Hall for a public hearing. May 9th, we will be in Ashland City Hall for a public hearing at 1:30 p.m. We'll get a press release out about that information. The senior property tax freeze passed on the April ballot, and we continue to move forward. We've got a timeline here dating back to May 8, 2023, when the Senate Bill 190 was truly agreed and finally passed. Boone County and other counties, we will not be able to implement a policy prior to the close of the legislative session, which is May 17, 2024. That has been our statement the entire time, in working with legislative sponsors on getting some cleanup legislation through so that counties across the state can get important clarity on aspects of it that where there were potential loopholes in the bill. Not potential, there were there were some drafting errors in the legislation. Those bills are moving forward well. They're gonna exec out Senate Bill 756 out of the House Committee today, and I suspect it's very possible that it either passes in its current form or some minor tweaks in the conference committee, but we'll be watching it closely. We'll hold all the public hearings prior to that May 17th deadline, and have a policy in the works. But a lot of that policy is going to depend on what that final legislation looks like. And like I said, we'll know that because legislative session comes to an end at 6 p.m. on May 17th. So we'll kind of plug in those remaining variables in the policy. About 99% of this policy will be determined by state statute. There's going to be, I say 99%, probably about 90%. There's going to be about 10% that's really kind of left up to counties to find some flexibility. And so that's part of what is important about the public comment period and public hearings, is so we can make sure that we dispel any misinformation that's been floating around out there. We've dragged our feet. I can promise you that Boone County will be will be the 11th county to adopt a policy, implement a policy, but out of 114 counties, just to provide you a reference point. But of those counties who adopted to date, their base tax year will be 2024. Our base tax year will be 2024. So all of those other counties, there's 10 other counties that have moved prior to us, those senior citizens will not receive any tax benefit prior to any senior citizen receiving a tax benefit in Boone County. So I just want to make sure that that information gets out there. Like I've said from the very beginning of this, we were going to be deliberate in how we approach this, but also push this forward at the same time. And that's what we've done. In fact, we put it on the April ballot prior to the cleanup legislation being passed. But we knew, we spoke with House leadership, we spoke with Senate leadership. We knew that there was an emphasis behind getting this cleanup legislation passed. We took a bit of a gamble, placing it on the ballot. And now we're going to move forward and implement it. We floated some ideas out there on the property tax, a potential means test at 300% of the assessed value that would cover 86% of the homes. It's very possible we don't include that because it's likely that cleanup legislation is not going to allow us to do it. And we're going to certainly be within bounds of the state statute. And where there is flexibility, we'll take those public comments and we'll come up with a policy and implement a program that works for seniors and that works within Boone County and certainly within lines of state statute. One other thing I'll mention also is that we are kind of in the beginning phases of a Greater Bon Femme watershed program as well, watershed initiative. And this is really based on feedback that we received from state regulators as well as EPA on just a current condition of Little Bon Femme watershed, Greater Bon Femme watershed. So this master plan is really going to tie in well to that Bon Femme watershed initiative. That's an important watershed, obviously, that touches all of a lot of that land in southern Boone County. So we'll make sure to keep everybody updated as that moves forward in the planning process. And so I'm going to get into the master plan, kind of talk about where we are to date and kind of what to expect moving forward. This first slide here will show you our partners. Our main contracted consultant on this is the I-5 group. They bring in some wonderful subcontractors to be part of this process. A Lockmuller Group, St. Louis University, Biohabitats, Community and Economic Development Solutions that really have developed expertise in areas that we need to make sure that we focus on, whether it be our natural areas, growth and planning, whether it be the economic development side of a master plan, infrastructure issues that we, have to go into a master planning process. And so we feel confident that we have a strong team of consultants helping us on it. But it is also a collaborative effort amongst the community members as well. We've had a survey that was part of that phase one, where we collected over 2,000 survey responses. We've had over 50 listening sessions throughout the county. several open houses to date. We have an advisory committee that is made up of approximately 20 community leaders across the county, and a technical committee as well that's really made up of a lot of our sister political subdivisions, especially on the utility side of things, to ensure that they have a seat at the table, that they are part of it, that they're listening, learning, but also more than anything, providing us feedback on their current capacity and future plans, future growth, as well as the utilities play such a critical role in a master plan, and how do we anticipate, how do we plan for growth in the future. It's been an excellent time for me to come in as presiding commissioner, because here is our discovery report, kind of that first phase where it goes through the existing conditions and the survey results and everything. This has been a wonderful resource to me so far, and learning, just learning a lot about the history of growth in the county, how it's been planned for, and then really it's such a wonderful time for me to come in and listen and learn, and help figure out where we're going, and figure out where we're going comes from really listening, learning, and then leading, and that's where we are in the master planning process right now. So why update the master plan? So it's been 25 years since we updated the master plan. Our last master plan took place in 1996. A lot has happened, a lot has changed since then. A lot of technology updates as well, which I'll kind of gloss over today. Our consultants will, in an online presentations, we'll get into it a bit more, but GIS, just the mapping capacity, has updated tremendously, and will help us, I believe, truly believe, in a future master plan that becomes more targeted in certain areas. How do we, how can we have some potential, how can we use the GIS to the greatest extent possible to really look at mapping and how we develop land, and what uses are there. So the master plan is a guiding, it guides the principles for rezoning requests, conditional use permits, for our land use, or for our planning regulations. It's a policy document. This policy document will help us update our zoning and development regulations in the coming years. And so you really have to have this kind of the master plan, kind of the vision of where the community expects to grow, how we expect to grow, and then take all of that and hopefully reach consensus, develop consensus in order to really start to better anticipate growth, and even encourage growth in areas of the county. This is kind of a look at the 1996, what kind of the 1996 land use plan looked like, but the jurisdiction that is under our control in Boone County government and part of the master planning is certainly that unincorporated area of the county. Now, that's not to say that this master plan, and we will certainly get into it, this master plan certainly requires the coordination, cooperation, collaboration with our municipal partners. If we cannot, not to spoil it all, but the projected growth of Boone County, we cannot do it without important collaboration, cooperation with our municipalities, and certainly how they zone, how they do development, and particularly likely the need for additional infill, because we're really on the precipice. We'll get to it here in just a minute, but the master plan, again, it's that policy document that's going to help us kind of refine our regulatory tools. It will also help guide the way for, it will be kind of that source document for more detailed plans. And Barbara and I were talking about just a minute ago, the 2009 Northeast Area Plan, important collaboration between Boone County and the city of Columbia. And that is a type of plan that will come about as a result of the master plan, and we'll use that master plan as a source document. So the more detailed plans that we get, we'll eventually get into, what's 6th bullet point down, the stormwater and watershed, the Greater Vaughan watershed initiative, that'll certainly be tied into the master plan. The housing study, how do we make sure that we have diverse, and increase the diversity and supply of housing options across the county, which is going to be critical for the future development of the county. That's going to certainly tie in, and that's again the reason why we're overlapping these two moving forward. Education is important. Is for those of you who've been in Boone County and Columbia for quite some time, you know that new schools within Columbia Public Schools will often drive growth, and so I participate in a long-term, long-range facilities planning committee for the Columbia Public Schools. I'm an ex officio member there, and part of the reason is how does the future growth of CPS tie into the master plan, and how can we ensure that new schools as they pop up have adequate infrastructure, but then also adequate planning and zoning in and around those areas to accommodate more compact subdivisions and other services that are needed to cut down on travel time for the surrounding communities. So again, the existing conditions and discovery report was the kind of concluded phase one. And we put spring and fall of 2023. We really got this document completed in winter of 2023. And then, as they were developing this, they were also moving forward resource management, and our advisory teams were moving forward into the phase two, where we are right now, the growth analysis scenario planning. That will likely conclude sometime late spring, early summer, I suspect. And then into the summer, we will have kind of that first draft of that master plan for public consumption, public feedback, and then likely fall to winter 2024. We will incorporate all that feedback, have public hearings, incorporate all that feedback before we adopt and refine the final master plan heading forward. Now, it is our intention that this master plan really be a living document. We do intend to have some built-in look backs. We expect the master plan document will be good for the next 20 years. But we also want, kind of benchmark some 5 to 7 year look backs several times throughout the life of the master plan to make sure that we keep it updated and it stays relevant as we move forward. As everybody knows now, a lot's changed over the last 25 years, 25 years. A lot is going to change in the next 25 years, that is for certain. And change seems to be happening at a much more rapid pace. And so we need to make sure that we build into that master plan, those look back periods that we're keeping it updated. Before I go further, we will certainly have some upcoming listening sessions. We'll get a press release out about this soon, but we'll have April 23rd and 24th. We're going to have listening sessions based on kind of where we are with the growth planning and scenario planning at this point. And so more information will get out about how to schedule time or to show up and provide feedback to our consultants, our resource management team on where we are so far. So what we've heard to date, again, all of it can be found at ourboone.com. If you go to ourboone.com, you'll be able to find this lovely document in an electronic form. You'll be able to find our virtual town halls, at least 2 town halls there that will be kind of part of the end of that phase one, as well as the most recent one that happened last week. Those will be available in their entirety. You can watch. You'll be able to sift through more data than you ever anticipated. You'll be able to sift through as far as Boone County, kind of where we are, where we've come. So I encourage you to check that out. You can also get signed up for additional updates there. But high level, what we've heard, are we at a tipping point as far as growth? Yes, we likely are. And we'll get into kind of where they kind of project population growth to be at here in just a minute. Strong areas of consensus in the 2,000 plus surveys and the hundreds upon hundreds of individuals who participated in all the listening sessions. Boone County expects a balanced growth approach to this. And so, it really depends on where you come from and what amenities you desire. but it is a balanced growth approach that we consistently see across the board. And as I mentioned, those needs vary in different parts of the county, and with the blessing of GIS mapping and technology that is rapidly evolved since our last master plan, we expect the ability to have a very detailed master plan moving forward. So some key issues that really popped up throughout the discovery report, constant feedback that we were hearing, the need for transportation. And we see this in our housing study as well as other comprehensive plans that I've listened to recently, is how do we reduce travel time for individuals? How do we increase, transportation options, increase safety? Those are always important. Natural resources. We have a lot of natural resources, a lot of public lands across Boone County, whether it be state parks, conservation areas. The city of Columbia has an extensive parks and recreation department. So how do we make sure we preserve those natural habitat in sensitive areas and reduce flooding? We have a lot of water that flows through, whether it be the Missouri River or a lot of underwater through our karst topography that moves through it, especially the southern Boone region. So there's there are a lot of important waterways that come through Boone County, and how do we make sure we improve water quality? That's something that we really got dinged on by our consultant in our report, is water quality. Whether it be the ongoing concerns the EPA has about the Hinkson, or kind of the greater Bon Femme watershed kind of starting to pop up on radars. How do we make sure we protect our waterways moving forward? Is going to be critical to future inhabitants of the county. How do we maintain rural character? Growing up in rural Missouri, Boone County is an anomaly right now, right? We've seen 78% of Missouri County, they're seeing a decline in the population, where deaths are exceeding birth. In Boone County, that's not the case. We're growing, but also our small municipalities in Boone County continue to grow as well, and continue to diversify their economies, and a lot of that has to do around strong school districts. But Boone County is really unique. How do we preserve the rural character for our unincorporated? How do we make sure to preserve the small town atmosphere and the small town pride that we see across Boone County, while also anticipating likely pretty rapid growth in population over the next 20 to 30 years. Infrastructure utility needs. There's one thing that I appreciate now today more than before I entered this office, is utility infrastructure, sewer capacity. Sewer is very expensive to run. It is the most expensive utility to provide, and where you see sewer, you tend to see growth. Where you see sewer capacity, you tend to see growth. And so our ability to keep pace, not only update our infrastructure needs, most of the utilities that are controlled in unincorporated Boone County are controlled by a sister political subdivision. We maintain the road infrastructure, and I talk a lot about gravel roads and the need to continue to improve gravel roads. But there are a lot of infrastructure needs for existing infrastructure and future growth, where infrastructure will continue to drive where development occurred. So growth projections, kind of projection one that our consultant came up with is more of the same, which sounds pretty mundane, but when you look at more of the same, what that means for us is like, whoa, yeah. Or the Americana, kind of where counties of similarly situated counties have kind of been trending in recent years as well. And so that green line at the top is more of the same. The 2000 to 2022 growth rate in Boone County, which is very possible that we will see that trend just continue, especially as Boone County continues to diversify our economy. If you think about where we are now, to where we were in the year 2000, you got to remember we went through a Great Recession, and I know it was difficult, but for the most part, on a macro level, Boone County was somewhat, insulated from the largest hit of the Great Recession. And that was a very unstable economic time for everyone, especially, certainly in Boone County, for Boone County residents as well. But we did not see the economic trends that other communities felt. Since that time, it's just since the time of the Great Recession, wasn't that long ago, just a little over a decade ago, and I guess at this point, we've seen a continued diversification of our economy. And there are some startups that are no longer startups, they're large companies, and some startups now that are about to be large companies in the near future. And so, we continue to expect the job market to remain very hot in Boone County, unemployment rate to remain very low, arguably low, and for a continued influx of people moving here for more economic opportunities. Now, I don't know if we hit 252,000 people by 2050 or not, or we kind of remain on that Americana, the share of the U.S. population growth, based on similarly situated areas, probably has us at a lower end, around 220,000 population by 2050. Regardless, those are both pretty significant increases in residents over the next 25 years. This is interesting because this really ties into our housing study, the need for a housing study now more than ever. We should have done one a decade plus ago, but better late than never. The housing projections. So this is a very interesting trend that that has been a national trend that certainly is continuing here in Boone County. Is this the projected, I took out the slide where it kind of talked about where we were at 3.3 occupants per housing unit, I believe there you go. I'm sorry, I didn't take it out. It's right there. 3.3 in the 1960s. You start to see that slowly decline. Certainly with population, with fewer births per household. You see that trend continuing to decline. Now, if that trend is to continue, we may be at roughly 2 to just a little over 2 occupants per household unit in Boone County by 2050. And if that rate continues, of course, we're going to need to adjust our housing stock, increasing it, also increasing the diversity of housing units to make sure that we don't gobble up all of our natural area, all of our undeveloped area very quickly. And this slide kind of shows you again, Boone County population housing projections. So if you're looking at the high growth, so if we're at high growth of individuals and we're at low per person per household, you're looking at a high end of 48,000 new housing units needed by 2050. Or, potentially if that trend of the per member per household doesn't slide, but we continue to see more of the same growth, likely around 37,000 new housing units on the lower end of that. And so if we continue on the Americana approach, you're looking at around 32,000 new housing units to around 21,000, 22,000 housing units on the very lower end. And so as many as, 48, 49,000 housing units at lower end, likely around 22,000 housing units in the next 25 years here in Boone County. That's a lot. And, our consultants, I know it kind of bucks what we think anecdotally here in Boone County, but our consultant, their analysis looking at similarly situated counties as well as other counties across the region, Boone County has really done a good job of not sprawling too much. And I know that kind of goes anecdotally against what we see and what we've experienced living here. We've seen a lot of land get developed, but when you can take a step back, look at it from a 30,000-foot view, generally speaking, we have done a fairly good job of growing in such a way that is relatively dense compared to our available land. And that's going to be, we're on that tipping point of growth. And that's, again, where the coordination, collaboration, cooperation with our municipal partners is going to be critical to make sure that that growth just, that we're not sprawling pretty dramatically in the near future. And that's, we've seen kind of on that precipice, you've seen other areas of the state. I mean, you take a look at like St. Louis County, where they were not quite ready and just quickly gobbled up a lot of land and really hard to come back in and do infill. So we're going to have to be very mindful of that and work collaboratively. Kind of Boone County job projections. I don't want to get too far into this, but as you would expect, and as we're seeing, professional, scientific, technical services are going to continue to expand, and we've really seen a lot of growth in technology-driven areas, sectors, and there's reason to believe that we will continue to see this. The University of Missouri being a large driver and kind of their renewed effort on getting what is being developed in labs and in practical space, or in theory, out quickly to production, and the coordination there to see that some of that production is happening here locally as well. And so, but there are quite a few companies that we thought were small a few years ago, equipment share, right? And they're very possibly a publicly traded company in a matter of a few years. You've got Patient. I don't know if you guys heard much about Patient. Brian Worley's group. They're getting ready to be a very large company, I expect, in the next several decades plus in Boone County. And so those are just two examples. And we're going to continue to see job growth, and part of that job growth is also our ability to anticipate infrastructure needs and to be able to actually recruit and retain. Because when you talk with companies who are here that want to remain here, and their ability to grow, of course, is partly based on their ability to be able to recruit and retain talent here locally. Precedent counties, and so this is important for us to look at as far as precedent counties. How do we look at those similarly situated counties? And so, our consultants did a very good job. This is just a kind of a partial list of precedent counties that we've been looking at, as far as kind of where there's a population center, kind of city center like we are. There are some metropolitan fringe areas for sure, but most of those similarly situated kind of look a lot like Boone County, where there's a Columbia, or there is a university that's often driving the economic driver of those areas. And then an important part of that too is looking at the land cover. What's the percentage developed, what's the percentage of forest, percentage of ag land, and how do we look at their comprehensive plans? How do we look at their population changes in order to kind of pull some best practices on the planning process? We've really kind of narrowed it down. These precedent counties really kind of show us some of the strongest indicators of the very likely situated, similarly situated counties. So Johnson County, Iowa, with the University of Iowa in Iowa City, Bloomington, Monroe County, Indiana, with the University of Indiana, Greene County, Missouri, which obviously has experienced some very rapid growth in recent years, and Douglas County, which is the University of Kansas, and Lawrence County, Kansas being their population center. Our goal, I think, is to certainly always beat Lawrence, Kansas, and Calvin's doing very similarly situated as well. So again, as I mentioned prior to, approximately 8,000 existing housing units in Boone County currently. With the high likelihood, I think we're kind of engaging in probably a need for 37,000 housing units. Kind of keeping that population trend, but assuming kind of falls in the middle of whether or not the household population drops off, continues at that decline, and kind of a balance between the Americana approach and continued as we've seen in the last 20 years. That 37,000 new housing units really kind of strikes us where we need to be. And so kind of what our consultants and our advisory technical committees are looking at and what we're asking for public input on is what do these scenarios look like? Scenario one, kind of the current trend, which has been a lot of the city edge and rural estates. And so there's been a lot of growth. I know that everybody knows kind of in Ashland, Hallsville, some growth in Centralia, and certainly along the rim of the city as well. How do we make sure, we'll talk about that, but if this is kind of the current trend where we're seeing a lot of the growth in those areas, there's a decent amount of infill. I shouldn't say there hasn't been a lot of infill. There has been a good amount of infill. The scenario two, which again, you can find our consultants who are more into the weeds on the data than I am. We'll kind of talk about a scenario two, A and B, where it's more city-focused development in the future. Certainly not stopping or preventing development unincorporated, especially along the edges of the municipalities. But how do we encourage and how do we work with our municipal partners on encouraging more land infill within municipalities, and how do we make sure to grow up and then ensure that we can develop along the fringes, along the edges of these municipalities in such a way that kind of allows for more density and shared services. And then scenario three would be the rural growth, where it kind of takes on more that potentially that St. Louis County model of more just kind of growth and in high development in the rural areas. I suspect that scenario number three is not the direction we had, but it is one that has to be explored and is certainly kind of a scenario that could play out over time. I'm not going to get too far into this because there's a lot up here and it's probably very difficult to see. Stephen, the consultant with the I-5 group, does a very good job of explaining the scenarios, scenario one, scenario option A, option B, kind of how that looks, and then scenario three as well, how that looks as far as providing those new housing units and then total acre of land that is consumed as a result of that development of those new housing units. And so these are scenarios that are kind of playing out internally right now, and they will certainly be bringing those forward more as they kind of work through what they look like with a lot of the technical partners who will be part of it. Evaluation, this is kind of where they are in the evaluation process. And again, I'm not going to go too far into these slides because I want to open up for questions and comments. But you'll be able to see all these slides on our website as well as the presentation where they kind of go into, what's the benefit or what provides the lowest benefit based on feedback that we've heard so far through the surveys, through the listening section, through the open houses, on transportation, on protection of natural resources, on housing availability and diversity of housing stock, on infrastructure needs, both current and future infrastructure. And part of that infrastructure obviously is how do you just the cost per home of infrastructure needs before you even build that home, what's going to be the cost of building that housing unit depending on the lot size, because that's certainly something we will have control over on Boone County government side through our resource management department, setting of our zoning regulations. Economic development impact of the different scenarios and rural character, part of that as well. And so I quickly breezed through those because I don't have I'm still digesting the data that they presented to us from last week. I was in transit back from Arizona from a site visit down there to Yavapai County the night of the event. So I've just been able to catch up online since then. Again, we'll have two listening sessions, April 23rd, April 24th, Tuesday and Wednesday. There will be kind of all throughout Boone County kind of listening session on where we're at. And with that, I would certainly open up for questions.
Oh, no, I was going to suggest that maybe people could come up here and talk, or we can walk around.
My question has to do with the housing.
Yeah.
Thing. Is there, I don't know at what level the discussion is taking place, but it seems like we have an awfully lot of single family housing for families working. We have awfully lot of multi-person housing for students. But is there any emphasis on increasing density by building more multi-family housing for rental or even condominiums? It seems like we have so few condominiums compared to other places.
That's certainly been the discussion in the master plan. That's certainly why we engaged with a consultant to help us on on a housing study, is because we have to increase diversity in our housing stock. I mean, that was clearly shown in the slide that shows continued decrease in individuals living in a home and the need for 37,000 additional housing units, right? I mean, if we continue on that current trend of what we're seeing on development in unincorporated Boone County, and we will certainly see some of that, but if we see kind of the larger lots, larger homes where it's just two people, while not also increasing housing availability for whether it be accessible dwelling units, condominiums, multifamily, apartment condominium complexes, it's going to have to be an across the board approach in how we increase housing diversity, because it's we have to meet the needs, and the needs haven't been met. Part of the more you dive into it, the more you realize the less you know of. It's just like what caused the situation which we're in right now. Boone County, this is not unique. This is happening nationally. It's happened really globally, especially in developed areas, on just the lack of housing, lack of affordable housing. And I don't want to say it was any one thing, but I think that we often underappreciate what the Great Recession did to grind housing development to a halt for really 1.5 to 2 years. And just catching up, certainly not the only reason we are in the predicament that we're in right now. As I mentioned, I wish we would have done a housing study, countywide housing study, a decade plus ago. It's better late than never. It's not going to be trying to couch people's expectations on what this is going to produce. It's going to produce paths forward for us to begin to try to address this issue. We're not going to solve this problem, but we have to be dedicated to addressing the issue, doing what we can, using the levers of government and looking internally. There are certainly developers who bring regulations to us and say, hey, if we could use this non-conforming lot in different ways, and we could build more affordable housing units, which within larger developments where homes are selling at 500,000+. We can use some of these non-conforming lots so there is a good discussion. There has to be a good discussion in the development community as well as others. What regulations can we relax, or what barriers can we remove, as well as what incentives can we create to increase housing diversity?
Do you know the occupancy rate currently? Because, you drive around Columbia, and perhaps Columbia and the county is different. There are just apartment complexes in many places.
There are a lot of vacancies. I don't have that data, but I know we have that data, and David has that data on the occupancy rate, and it was I don't remember the exact number, so I don't want to throw it out. It was higher than I thought it was. It was, it was a high, we have a higher unoccupied rate than I thought we did.
Yeah, when you talk about housing diversity, does that incorporate age demographics and gender demographics and that's how you're determining multi versus more dense? I'm thinking about, we moved here about 4.5 years ago. And in looking for housing, we're retirees and we wanted to downsize and we wanted a smaller home. And what we were told is that people don't build smaller homes because it's not profitable, but that would be my assumption of what retirees would want to do. So when you're looking at the growth, and I worked on the census and a number of people told me, oh my God, the growth in this area over the last whatever number of years. And my thought was, well, is some of that growth retirees? Is it students who stay here and go to work? I'm sure it's a mixture of it, but I guess my question is all of that incorporated into these scenarios and the numbers and where you're going with them?
Yeah, so it is certainly, it is not data that, like, that's pulled out, but it's certainly, we're certainly looking at the trends of per person per household, right? And so that's certainly reflective of a couple different things, right? Empty nesters, Columbia and Boone County is a good place to retire. If we have to be deliberate and make sure it continues to be that way. So there, I believe that part of that decrease in population per household is not only just a decline in the population growth of people having children, but also, older adults, empty nesters who are moving to Boone County as a place to live and retire. And so that demographic trend, that slide kind of captures the bigger part of that. It doesn't pull out age, but it does show a decrease of people per household. And so, that's, again, part of the reason why we're running the housing study in conjunction with this. I imagine David on the housing side, he has a lot more data, the realtors, state realtors, as well as, census. He has a tremendous amount of data just solely focused on housing. I suspect he has kind of a breakdown of age on housing as well.
So I have a question. We're looking at, important and immediate needs now and up to 2050, like housing for people. But can you talk a little bit about the League of Women Voters is very concerned about climate change and the effects on the population now and certainly up to 2050. So can you talk about how the plan is also, hopefully, taking into consideration and trying to address climate change in terms of housing, energy efficiency, all those things that, address the big picture item that we have to consider and address.
Yeah. So energy efficiency, I know, will certainly be part of, at least for homes and new construction, and certain remodels, depending on the level of the project, the scope of the project, will all be part of our codes. And we're currently on I didn't know this. I believe we adopted 2018, but we may just still be on the 2018 code. I know the 2021 codes are coming out in the near future. Sounds like 21 code should already be out, but there's some tweaking that's happening there in order to address some of the energy efficiency issues that were part of that 2018 code. And so those codes tend to get adopted as they come out. They tend to get adopted by the cities, certainly City of Columbia, and then Boone County Resource Management. So those get addressed through codes. Now, on how kind of that scenario, kind of climate change is kind of sprinkled throughout this, and it will likely lead to changes or tie into the climate action plan that the city has and any potential future climate action plan in the county, whether or not we eventually have the authority to do that or not, how we develop that as the master plan being the guiding document. The scenarios two, both A and B, kind of the more looking at kind of infill and really growing within the confines of the municipality. There's a lot of, one could argue, right? I mean, where the infrastructure is already existing, the ability to be able to, maintain the current road infrastructure, sewer, water, fiber, all of the infrastructure needs that exist, and just growing up, while also, ensuring that there's greater density along the rings as we grow out as well, could help mitigate, and something that I know David, our housing, and our housing plan is looking at as well as our master plan is how do we create a master plan that allows for more mixed use in areas as well, so people have to drive less to get to what they need, whether it be groceries or school or their entertainment, and that certainly ties into climate change, reducing the need for longer range transportation. It also helps on reducing travel time, which is often tied to people's quality of life. That's something that we have found through the master plan and through the beginning of the housing planning conversation is the longer the commute time, the decrease in happiness a person experiences, the decrease in quality of life and the less likely they are to be tied to that community for longer term.
We've got time for one more question.
Okay. Just wondered if you could comment, I saw reported that you recently toured, some tiny home stuff down in Springfield, and, we came here from Texas, or what's going on in Austin, and we're just creating, it seems like those that are less fortunate, they can't afford typical housing unit. And some of the tiny homes aren't that cheap either, but having a community where, it's shared space, kind of like the Ash Street Court or something, you have a much smaller home. Like an apartment, like a hotel room for your entire domicile, but it's a place that they can lock up.
Yep.
Any comments?
I was blown away by what I saw in Springfield, and Eden Village. Now that the individual who runs that came from Austin, and he kind of saw what they were doing there on tiny homes, but he was also concerned with the size of their communities and how they grew unsustainably large. And he believes he's found this.
Well, they had to go way out of town to do that.
Yeah, and so he believes the sweet spot is anywhere is a tiny home community you're looking at very high end of 5 acres, typically down to 2 to 3 acres, where you can have, no more than 42 is what he said.
Like a couple of blocks.
Yeah, and it's a very small area. Now, it was a good meeting that we had. I went with some city officials. I know that we are in ongoing conversation of how can we find places to allow for this. Where are there, utilities that are run that make sense for individuals? But the price point is coming down significantly. They had, at their very first development of Eden Home, they're one of their 40, small home community. The total project cost was around 3.6 million. And that was pre-pandemic. They've actually brought the cost down now because of just some cost savings that they've been able to produce. They're also starting to 3D print their tiny homes as well, which is a tremendous upgrade. And also like safety upgrade. These things are going to be EF5 rated. So we have to think outside the box. Like we often get, and I say this as an elected official who, the regulatory body reports up to me, right? The resource management, and certainly the city of Columbia, their planning department reports up as well. we need, our planning departments to be open to thinking differently about some of these things, to keep pace with the demand and with the changing environment that we're experiencing. There are a lot of cost-effective ways, that creative solutions that we can come to if we're willing to all work together on it.
So that concludes our lunch and learn program. Thank you so much. Excellent, great overview of what you're doing. Thank you for your work, and everyone should keep involved in the process. I want to announce our next lunch and learn program is May 8th. It's on mental health. Carissa Kessler, Director of Crisis Services, Central Region for Behavioral Health, will speak on behavioral crisis services in Missouri. And I think Mari, our president, might moderate that. She's our mental health expert. Please share this program with others and use Facebook and email, because it was really very informative and excellent, and a big process. Thank you so much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
lwv.org. lwvcbc.org. Yeah. I wasn't connecting the two.
That's great. All right. Good. Yeah, yes. I had one, not really. Jan? Yeah. And I'm gonna be-
When she
Yeah.
no questions.
The one thing I- One comfort one that would go